to the Art and Void podcast, a sacred domain to elevate artists' mind, body, and spirit. For all you artists searching for a home, consider dropping into the Skool community at skool.com/artandvoid. That's school with a K. Link is in the show notes. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome my friend and creative colleague, Lucas Antonio Bakker, to the Art and Void podcast. Lucas is a Dutch and Mexican-American composer, producer, multi-instrumentalist who has built a life following his joy, whether it's through nature, storytelling, or his innovative approach to music. Recently, he's found incredible success creating relaxing Zen-inspired guitar music, blending his multicultural heritage and deep harmonic sensibilities to craft sounds that invite reflection and peace. With over 1.5 million streams, Lucas is connecting with listeners worldwide through his acoustic and electronic works. His journey has been one of curiosity, exploration, and staying true to his creative spirit. Lucas, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yes.
How are you doing?
Lovely introduction.
Yeah, all true. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you. Yeah, I feel good. I'm excited to be here. And my mind is, as always, swirling with like, and on this track I'm going to do that, and on that song, and then also, that harmonic progression and that tempo with that rhythm.
Well, we'll lock it in for a few minutes here and then get back to it. One of the things I was like, just personally, I was reflecting on before we jumped into this was how long I've known you and how many times we've collaborated on things together. Multiple songs, a lot of photos that some of them I'd forgotten about. So we've been collaborating a long time, and from the inception of me meeting you, there's something about your energy and your spirit that just exudes a lot of excitement and joy, and creativity just kind of seems to just be what thrills you and lights you up. And so it's just always been this theme of like, wow, Lucas really has a lot of just positive energy. He seems to love what he does. And do you think that's fair? And then also, if so, like, how is that just kind of translated into this long life you've been living being creative?
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's fair. I love that. I love hearing that, because we can trace it back to so many different things throughout life. What is like, one has to know the bitter to appreciate the sweet. One has to know the dark to appreciate the light. And I definitely, let's see, we've known each other for about 8 years, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
About 8 years. Yeah. And I guess I'd like to say it's a combination of being a hippie child and I remember like being read stuff like quotes like way back in like the, early 90s, late 80s, like be the change you want to see in the world. And, I think I spent a lot of time in my teenage years and early 20s being more in like the darker spell,
Sure.
Going through like a darker chapter. And I think as I've gotten older, I've just appreciate feeling good, being healthy, and creating or just keeping myself and my neutral of how I conduct my life in a happy place. Always with a fun tap dance with my darkness, because my darkness is just as dark as my light shines.
Yeah.
And I just I appreciate other people when I find their energy to be like complementary to mine, or when I see other people just out shining like a beacon, and I'm like, that is cool. That is cool, And so it was what feels right. And I think, being able to have the balance of it. And I full disclosure, I have a Jungian therapist I go to,
Yeah.
And I was already on this track before, but that's really, really cool. And so I always try to find like, the middle ground of being neutral and putting out really good energy into the world, while at the same time acknowledging really dark thoughts that flash through my
Sure.
head,
Yeah.
and you know, it's just that's part of being a well-rounded person and a human, you
Yeah.
know, like acknowledging the darker things allows me to be in a healthier place, I think, instead of like pushing it down or indulging the darkness a little too
Right.
much, you know, like where's
Yeah.
that balance? And that's that tap dance that I was talking about. And you know, and also like I think I was just saying this in the weekly call on the Art and Void. There is science proven about positive interactions between people and
Mm.
how even if it's a stranger, you know, someone, the person checking you out at a grocery store, or you're on a hike and you cross paths with someone, or just walking along the street. And I love and I always have just that 1 second joke, that one quick thing that's like a universal truth that people see. It's usually
Yeah.
something I usually go for the slight ridiculous. That's
Yeah.
obviously not the case, but ridiculous and fun to the circumstance of whatever's happening. And those kind of things have been proven to like be very healthy for both people involved and to echo out throughout the rest of both people's days and keep spreading. And enough of that prolongs your life, apparently, or can. Like it doesn't, you know, but it can. And so, you
Mm.
know, I'm planning on hitting 120, you know, so I'm doing everything now and continuing, laying the foundation.
I love it. That's a life goal. Go 120. Yeah. That's great. And like having a sense of humor too about ourselves and the absurd and the dark and all that stuff too. That helps as well. But it's so funny. You mentioned the like interaction, and yeah, that's one of the reasons, one of the missions for me with the whole Art and Void community space. But just, you know, until I got more connected intentionally, not just sort of like some friends to kind of hang out, but like actually being seen and having other people notice, you know, these spaces of myself. And even I would even say like me coming and working on my first track with you was kind of part of that. It was like, I've never, this is a whole new genre. It'd been years and years since I've actually recorded anything, and this was a new style for me. It felt like a truth of who I was. And like I was taking it very seriously. I was very nervous in a lot of ways, but you just had like this playful spirit. You're like, all right, this is great. It's great. Let's do this. Let's do this. This is fun. And both things can happen at the same time. Like it's not like a struggle necessarily. It can be simultaneously fun while also taking what we create in our artistry very seriously. And that interaction we have was very positive. It's like, oh, okay. This is a space where I can actually kind of be lifted up in a lot of ways and yeah, and be connected. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Side note, Badlands I think is still like the fan favorite for most people. So yeah,
Yes,
I attribute
I love that.
to you.
I give it
Yeah.
spins myself. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really really cool. Yeah, and like go ahead.
Go. Yeah.
I was going to say to what you were saying in terms of like spaces that, you know, we can be in a studio space working on a really dark song, you know,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I feel like there's a combination of like, I've watched lots of stand-up comedians. I love humor, and I've been a host at different like concerts where I'm the one in charge of like, you know, controlling the energy basically.
Yeah.
And I've had enough interactions to where I've accumulated this data of when it feels like we need a commercial break, when we need humor, when things get really dark, when to let a deep moment set in,
Yeah.
and how to break it, how to come back out, how to keep people in this nice flowing state. And I've definitely applied that in the studio. Whenever I work with anybody, I try to make them just feel good. Just, you know, and in the process, I feel good, you know, because it comes naturally to kind of create a space where like, hey, this is the place to throw spaghetti at the wall, to do everything wrong that you'd be afraid to do in front of people. Who cares? You know, this is where we do it so we can get to the gold. And the new thing I've been saying a ton is you got to take out the trash to get to the gold. You know, sometimes you got to just like, boom, get rid of that so that you can really you can get to the good stuff. So that's part of that, creating that environment to just because that's where the best stuff comes from. That's how I get the best stuff done too. And then appreciate too. Oh, we're gonna go deep. Okay, cool. Let it sink in.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
do that. Let's sink right there,
Yep.
and then we'll come back out of it once we've achieved what we're going for there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because when you're in that, people, and you produce other people's work as well, singers that come in and do stuff as well, obviously your own music. And yeah, when someone's like in that little bit of that tension, that fear, like, am I safe to do this? There's like a constriction energy to that. And that's the opposite of creativity. That's the opposite of openness. And just like, what if, maybe this might
Yeah.
suck, but we're going to try it. Oh, that definitely sucked. We'll just delete it, you know? And that's
Yeah,
kind of like, yeah, it's kind of the part of the joyful process of just like being open.
absolutely. Absolutely. Because being open is how you're going to get to the best, to the
Hmm.
absolute best stuff, you know. And that's the truth for me too. When I'm recording my own music, I'll record stuff that I'm like, yeah, nobody ever needs to hear that. You know, but after going through, you know, like again, taking out the trash, sometimes it'll be like, oh, that's what it
Mm.
is. There's that nucleus of creativity I was looking for. That's the root of the tree that is going to make this piece be awesome. And I had to, like, you
Mm.
know, scrounge around in the dirt for a little bit and be like, that sucked. Oop, that sucked. Okay, that sucked. Especially the way is one of the cases where that really comes up a lot is when writing lyrics and songwriting. When I'm not, you know,
Mm.
sometimes you have to just like say the most ridiculous mumble jumble of just basura, you know, to get to something where you're like, oh, that's what we were doing. That's what we were searching for.
Wow. That's cool. Yeah, maybe I should try that. Maybe I should try like doing an absurd. When I'm doing lyrics specifically, I'm like pretty locked in. I'm like kind of in a certain minutia, trying to connect with like a certain emotional wavelength. But maybe I should just
Mhm.
try being like, this is just going to be a what's that Sesame Street song? Do you know what I'm talking about? Um, but whatever that is, I can't remember.
I don't, but I like the feeling of where you're going with that. I think I have. If I hear it, I would recognize it because I
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
was raised on some Sesame Street for sure
yeah,
here and there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Lucas, so you've done a lot of different stuff from electronic, and you're also a screenwriter. But it seems like you found a lot of traction with where you've landed in the past couple of years here with this Zen, relaxing guitar music. Was that surprising to you? How's that feeling for you right now? And was this where you thought you'd be?
You know, it's something I'm very grateful for, and it's something that came about out of a decision I made in the pandemic. I think early. Well, I'll just say like it's such a long story. Let's try to
Hmm.
we'll try to get it there.
Yeah.
I have a degree in music composition, and but I've always had other creative, like all different like creative expressions call my attention, and
Hmm.
I feel like I've been lucky enough, without tooting my own horn, to be at least fairly decent at several of them,
Yeah.
and that has turned out to be a little bit of a double-edged sword in that, you know, spreading myself thin, you know, not only just in the music world with the different musical projects, but then writing and, you know, in front of the camera stuff sometimes.
Hmm.
And I love that we are in a space where we're starting to recognize more that one doesn't have to fit into just a box, you know.
Yeah.
However, that being said, if something is grabbing traction, water that tree, throw gas on that fire. Don't throw gas on the tree, but
Don't mix the metaphors.
right. You know, but so it is, you know, I feel like guitar is something that got me through my darkest places, you know, that my grandfather was from Mexico, who I have the namesake, my middle name, Antonio.
Hmm.
He was from Mexico, and he was a mariachi guitar player and singer. And he, way back in the 40s, 1940s in the US, he wooed himself this beautiful white woman who, escandalo, was already with someone else. I'm not going to go into too many details. I don't want, you know, family to put rake me hold me
Yeah,
over
yeah.
the fire or whatever. But he that primal call of the music is what my grandma said just called her. You know, she
Mm.
was just like, there's something happening here that feels right. And
Mm.
so and I during my teenage years, that was really when I was, teenage years can be, you can be on fire. I was
Right.
definitely on fire. And I had just moved back to the United States after spending 5 years in Mexico. And I was, like there were some big changes happening. And so guitar became this way of expressing just this hurricane of energy that I had, just this force of nature. I was doing variations on the malagueña and like this flamenco. I can't say true flamenco because it was
Sure.
like flamenco-esque,
Yeah.
but and I'm definitely not a purist. It was like a fusion, and but it was just a way to really express the fire that was burning inside. And I felt that, and I was like, okay, this is saying what words are falling short of for me. And I had spiritual moments in
Mm.
rooms by myself where it just connected to something that felt universally true. I don't know, that felt so true to me in that moment. And it's when I really, really got into classical music as well,
Mm.
like Chopin on the piano. I again, some of the most amazingly deep moments I've had in life are in a room by myself playing guitar or piano and just having moments where I have chills, where it's just, it doesn't feel like me, or I mean,
Mm.
all the corny things and
Mm.
blah blah blah. There's cliches about those kind of moments, but it just feels phenomenal, and it feels like a deeper truth of stuff that we don't necessarily touch on in regular life, and so a way of explaining emotions that we hold deep or we have the capacity to feel. So to try to like bring that back to, am I surprised that I'm getting traction in guitar? I'm very pleasantly surprised. I
Mm.
love it. I decided, I put out a song with my friend Richard Houghton, who is a phenomenal musician. We've known each other for so long. He is my brother, essentially,
Mm.
um, and we had put out a song, and I went on to Spotify, and I looked at what the different playlists that had put it on their playlist, and I saw one that was like Sky Valley Records, and I was like, oh, cool, interesting. And I emailed them and I said, hey, I'm putting out some more music. Would you be interested in partnering on that? And they were like, actually, we literally just formed, like they just this was at the end of 2022, or late 2022, just been in the process of forming a small indie label that's focused on relaxing guitar, acoustic and electric. And I mean, shout out to Nathaniel Graham, who runs Sky Valley Records. He is awesome. So highly recommend checking out all the music that he puts together for the label, let alone his own music is really
Mm.
good as well. So yeah, so what turned out to be like a potential collaborating on one song turned into the album that I put out last year, Inner Planet, and then the album that I put out this year, Familiaris, and more. And then also I just recently launched a Alias project with this focusing on the electronic guitar space
Hmm.
called Tides on Saturn. Tides on Saturn. Saturn's always been my favorite planet. When
Mm.
I was like 6 or 7, I wanted to work in NASA. I wanted to go to Saturn. And so, and that's already gaining traction because of my partnership with Sky Valley Records, which I'm very grateful for. And I think it's a thing of taking the path of least resistance,
Mm.
because these guitar pieces, those come so naturally to me and so easily. I hate to say easily, but it's like
Right.
I struggle so much less. It's just, oh, cool. I start to feel a vibe, a tempo, and something with like a harmonic progression that feels like, okay, I'm going to be able to just lay down some butter on top of that, and then the melodies start coming once I have the vibrations and the harmonic progression and the tempo, and then it just like takes on a life of
Mm.
its own. And then I'm like, oh, cool. In 3 hours, I made another one. Awesome,
Mm.
cool. Great. That's a good day. It was a good day. I did that 2 days ago, and other songs. other genres, I'll usually it takes a little more like
Sure.
yeah, just a little more work, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think of that as a sign.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
A lot of ground covered, I know.
No, I didn't know that about your family history, and that's really interesting. I mean, as someone who loves the Jungian and the Joseph Campbell and all the spiritual things, do you feel that something like that is just sort of the lineage and you have and the connection to your heritage? Do you feel like that's like coming through? Do you feel a connection to that past when you just strum the guitar and I don't know, in this space that you're describing, it seems like almost like a home or a very natural space to just sit down and relax, and then creativity opens up and comes through you?
Yes. Yeah. I definitely know that, it's the creativity is, I will frequently thank my grandfather or talk to my grandfather. May he rest in
Hmm.
peace. He's been gone for 20 years, or just, I'll look at a picture of him and be like, I'm doing you proud,
Hmm.
like I hope you are proud of me, and thank you. And I thank him for the lessons that he gave me when I was a teenager, starting to really dive into guitar, and I would see him once or twice a year. And I remember a specific moment too. I remember once when I was picking up the guitar and I was playing like some rock guitar on this acoustic guitar, and it was like early stages of my guitar world. And he was just like, no, mijo, come here. And he like he showed me like one or two things, and he said, you practice this or you practice this over and over until you got it perfect, and you keep playing it.
Wow.
Along those lines, not word
Yeah.
for word, but he's like, stick with one thing and just really, like refine that, and then continue to play that once that's refined. And it's something that I, as a teacher as well, as have been able to reword to students, because it establishes consistency and stuff. But my and then I coming back 6 months later and showing him what I had been working on, and him being like, okay, and then he gave me another thing or two, and then coming back like a year after that, and him being like, wow, and then coming back a time after that, and he basically said that I had surpassed him on what I was doing on guitar. And
Wow.
so, and that was a really cool moment. And I know that he was very proud of me for picking up, you know, the music, because that was such a instrumental part and formative part of his life. And then the next generation, my mom and her sisters and brother, they weren't musicians. It could be a thing of like, maybe he wasn't supportive, to them. Mistakes are made.
Yeah.
When you're really good, you can be too much of a perfectionist, and then
Yeah.
you can knock down those close to you who hold your opinion really high.
Hmm.
And so I don't quite know the full spectrum of why the music has skipped a generation, but being having his name as my middle name feels, and like it feels very it feels good to be carrying
Mm.
the mantelpiece. I don't know what's the saying, to carry the
Yeah.
baton, not the mantelpiece,
Yeah.
but to be carrying the baton on. That feels good. It feels good, and it definitely pushes me to, it's especially in these last several years. It's always been like fuel the fire of like, okay, I have to be like as good as I possibly can. And it definitely now allows me to, or like pushes me to do everything the best I possibly can in that moment, and to give every little track, whether it's a minute and a half, whether it's 3 minutes, 4 minutes, to just make sure that that has something in it that rings true of the human experience. That's always the goal, to have an emotional nucleus in there where, you know, it feels right. There's some kind of feeling of the
Hmm.
human experience, because music has always been for me about emotional expression.
Hmm.
And I've always needed it to fit, I frequently, and I try to write it in a fancy way sometimes when I'm writing a bio or stuff, but words sometimes don't quite get to where I'm going. That I try to reach places with my music because music allows me to reach places where words fall short of when you're explaining things.
Yeah.
And so the genre of this neoclassical guitar, relaxing guitar stuff, um, in that space, a lot of people just press play and they go about their day doing other things, and that's cool. It's good for me to understand that, and so I try to find the middle ground of it can blend right in with the rest of the music in the genre, and yet it's inviting you to listen a little closer, so that after you maybe people hear it a couple times, one of my little ambassadors, one of my mini songs that are out there, they'll be like, oh, I kind of like this, and they come back and they listen, and hopefully the more they listen, the more they get from it. And because that's exactly that's been my experience with the music that has shaped my life, like listening to a Chopin song on piano, being like, oh, that was so cool, and listening to it again and being like, wow, that was so cool, and then like for the 100th time being like, holy, that is deep.
Yeah.
That is medicine, that is expressing from deep down in places of the soul that we don't access on just a regular basis, on a regular day.
Yeah. There's a lot of medicine to the soul. And I can see why this this particular genre has grown so much with the whole, like, the trauma, so to speak, of like the pandemic, and like people like stressing out about everything, and the fact that you're imbuing, whether it's like in the background or very present, you're still imbuing your spirit with a real intentionality and a real connectedness into each song. And I believe that spirit carries through. It doesn't matter whether, wherever it is. And so, yeah, there might be a moment where it arrests them for a moment and they think, I need to actually spend a little more time with this song and what it's saying to, what's it on the spirit level, on the soul level, like, why is this capturing me? And I like that. I like this idea of giving some peace for people, and being a healing form of art.
Absolutely.
But along with that, so there's multiple things I think that can contribute to varying degrees of whatever success may be for an artist. And yeah, there's also sort of like, there's this trusting the spirit, this kind of leaning into what you were maybe saying, least resistance, what is natural and true. But also there's this other side where, for those who are looking to maybe make this more of a living, to kind of pay some bills, there's, okay, well, now how do I get this to the world? How do I communicate this? How do I share this? I talk about this a little bit in other places, but like, when I hear the term marketing, that doesn't necessarily excite me as an artist. It's like, oh, cool, I get to market. But if I reframe that a bit and say, you know what, I'm sharing something awesome that people I know will love. And so I'm just communicating something that's really fucking awesome that people will love. How do I do that in a way that's not, gross marketing? How do I do that? And so you've also put on this other hat of like, okay, what is the approach here? Whether that's just continue to produce new music at a consistent basis, communicating that to people, whether that's, personally or through social media and things like that. And that seems to also contributed to the growth that you're seeing, and maybe that energizes you in a lot of ways too. You're seeing, oh, this is actually getting some response. People do want to hear this. I don't feel like a douchebag, like screaming about it, because people are telling me it's awesome and they like it.
Yeah, I mean, you said it right there. It's like nobody, we don't get super stoked to, I get to go market this now, man. I can't wait to go hit the pavement and tell everybody, because I mean, it is the ecosystem. It's knowing the ecosystem of where we currently find ourselves. Right now this is working. 5 years ago the game was different. 5 years from now it'll be different. Next year, who knows? I feel like I don't do nearly enough on social media because it's always it's a thing, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm just to make a quick post, and then 45 minutes later, I'm fighting technology rage, just follow it through. Yes, okay, you wrote it, it's good enough. And then okay, yeah, okay, a couple hashtags, and can we just send, please? Just
Yeah.
send and get to the next thing in life.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously we want to make a living doing our art
Yeah.
because spending hours of the day doing other things sucks. It can be such an oppressive system. I think that every human being is born with the same spark of creativity,
Mm.
and that and there's a bit of nature versus nurture in there. People have it in different degrees and apply it in different areas of life, but I do believe that so much of the anger we see in the world is built up frustration
Hmm.
because there's something inside that wants to say that needs to say what it's trying to say. And I
Hmm.
started recognizing it in my mid 20s that in any given day, if I didn't have either a physical outlet like either working out or running or especially like going for a hike or something in nature, and I didn't have a creative outlet. I didn't play music at all or work on music. I would feel more frustrated. I would
Yeah.
feel like
Of course.
on edge, a little more
Totally.
angrier,
Yeah.
more quicker to like snap and say or not snap, but just say something with a little bit of I don't know if we can cuss, but a little bit of shitty energy in it.
Yeah.
That I'm like, oh, that doesn't that I don't like doing that. I don't want to do that. I already did it. It's in motion.
Hmm.
And so I think that like how we market ourselves is it's a tricky thing. I do listen to social media, like on social media. I do consume social media. I
Yeah.
will say that I consume at this point. I consume more than I put out, and I try to keep a balance. But I definitely consume more. However, I follow people strategically. I
Yeah.
follow certain people that are marketers, but I try to find people that are from legitimate sources. Like I've gone
Yeah.
through, there's a lot of, and I'll hear a lot of people say similar things, contradicting things.
Hmm.
And I just, I try to kind of stay, there's a saying in Spanish, al tanto, and it's basically means kind of like on top of it, try to stay at the cutting edge of what kind of like what's happening. And I look at it in terms of these people are usually talking about pop music. I don't see anybody trying to market. How do we market this sexy
Right.
new relaxing guitar?
Right.
Aside from having conversations with Nathaniel at the label at the Sky Valley Records,
Yeah.
where we sit there and we plan it out. But you know, I uh I also kind of live in fear of the algorithmic overlords.
Yeah.
And it's something I've really been meaning to put onto social media and talk to people about. Like, who else lives under the fear of the algorithmic overlords? Because now that I'm getting some traction, I have other stuff in other genres, and
Yeah.
things can be so niche that, oh, we don't want to confuse the algorithm because they see what the people respond to, and we reward the winning stuff, and
Mm.
I don't want to like somehow slow down the traction. But I have this literal conversation and music planning and scheming with my homie Richard, who I talked about,
Yeah.
Richard Houghton. We do this all the time. We've done
Mm.
it all the time. We go, if a couple months go by, we have to get on the phone and be like, the same conversation we always have, man. And it's a thing, and it helps to have other friends who are either in a similar space or somewhere adjacent, and just to see what's working, what's not. He's done really well for himself as an independent artist. I love it because it's a goal to be like, it
Yeah.
is achievable. Look at it
Yeah.
right there. That's it. And he is someone who has kind of didn't spread himself as thin as I feel like I kind of did a little bit in the past, deciding where I wanted to put my hours of the day. And he's kind of like honed in on this really cool sound that over time has grabbed traction, and he's kept feeding it, and people
Mm.
respond really well to it. I mean, it's really cool. It's
Mm.
really cool what he does. And so it's I and I'm planning on taking a couple risks here soon with some of my releases,
Yeah.
putting out a little bit more of my electronic experimental stuff that's led by guitar and natural sounds, but basically has like rhythm underneath it and percussion and stuff. And because that's good for different collaborations. I have some new collaborations coming up in
Cool.
this instrumental area while also consistently putting out my instrumental guitar stuff, my just all guitar.
Well,
And
I mean, that's what
yeah.
you, I mean, that's one of the things I do. You mentioned consistency and just like being super consistent seem to just like, I'm going to dedicate this and be locked in on this thing. And that
Yeah.
consistency, still feel like sometimes we're too often in the mindset of like, get that viral hit, get the hit. And it's like, that's kind of not the current landscape of the independent artist. It's like you
Correct.
got to cultivate an audience and a relationship with that with consistency.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And if you do go viral, cool, seize upon that moment. But most of the
Sure.
people like that's why major labels are really like
Mm-hmm.
faltering and they're kind of running around with their heads cut off because they've just been chasing every single person that goes viral. Oh, you went viral? Sign it. But then
Yeah.
not understanding that that's not a recipe for longevity,
Yeah.
people have moments like it used to be 15 minutes of fame. That
Yeah.
used to be like that's a cliche saying from the 90s and maybe early 2000s. It's 15 seconds right now.
Yeah. It's true.
It's 15 seconds and the woof and we forget about that person, and so I think the slow build is much more effective and it's much better and it's slow and being patient, and perhaps you see other people that jump up over here and jump up over there and that seems sexier and like cooler in the moment, and that's okay because you are not them, they are not you, and you have different places and goals and aims in life, and so I think any independent artist that can not have a day job aside from their passion, that can just create and pay all their bills and live a good life, save money on top of that. That right there, like basically be a middle class person, but doing what you love.
Yeah.
That should be the goal. Anything
Right.
on top of that, amazing,
Yeah.
awesome. Welcome it, but for now, like aim to just be able to like be consistent. Like I released a song every 2 weeks up through July of last year. And then I took a month off, but then I released at least one song or two songs a month after that. All
Wow.
except for December. December we take off because it's all Christmas music. It's all Mariah. That's all people want to listen to.
Never gonna
Mariah.
change. She's
No, no.
locked it in.
Right, that's
Yeah.
it. That's all people are into, to the point where it's a joke and we are like, oh
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
goodness, again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But then George Michael also with Last Christmas,
Oh yeah.
and or if that's Wham, I forget. But yeah, and so all right now I'm planning out my 2025 and I'm
That's
several
great.
months. I'm ahead several months. I have my
I
January,
love that.
literally right before this. I just uploaded my a song that's coming out in mid-January. I have something coming out on the 3rd called Life in the Garden, a nice instrumental guitar. And then on the 17th, I have one of my favorite songs. It's a cover of Tame Impala's Feels Like We Only Go Backwards,
Hmm.
which amazing song. Holy cow. That one got my attention like
Hmm.
12 years ago. And I was just like, what the, like, who is this? Like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, you are capturing something here, bud. And so it feels really cool to like, a decade later be
Mm-hmm.
making this kind of like it's like a heartfelt tribute to what I feel is like the message and like the core of that song. It's very faithful. I just add in a couple
Yeah.
other little things here and there, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful music. I'm a big fan of Tame Impala. Um, and I'm planning out. I have like collaborations. It's basically the goal is to put out at least 2 songs a month
Wow.
all year all
Amazing.
year, and
Yeah.
that's under my Lucas Bakker,
Yeah.
Spotify, but also my Tides on Saturn project now of like electronic, but relaxing and ambient, kind of like feels like you're surfing stardust through, between planets and moons. At
Mm-hmm.
least that's the goal.
Yeah.
And that stuff now, I have 2 EPs out. It came out at the end of September, and then another EP last month in November, and I have about 150,000 accumulated streams on Spotify from that. Be and I'm so happy and grateful because it's really fun, slightly different vibe, and
Hmm.
I don't have to necessarily fear the algorithmic overlords because I feel like I'm pleasing them by doing something very clean under a new alias
Hmm.
that is linked to my Lucas Bakker though in the bio. You can be like, hey, this is that, and so yeah, it's consistency
Yeah.
and putting forth your best foot as much as possible, or best work. I don't know. It's one, I think I'm mixing my
Well,
metaphors.
because the reason why I think that the vision to be consistent is important is because the underlying theme here is like you will not be consistent if you don't love it and you don't feel aligned. If you're chasing some kind of other thing, other than like this is what I love to do, but then also having a strategy of building this life if that's the direction you want to go. And it's interesting too because yeah, I've actually taken different courses. I've looked at different strategists to get your music out and do different approaches. But that a lot of times you're right. It's not a one size fits all. Those are like hip hop or pop people. It doesn't work with gothic country. It's like you kind of betray the spirit of like this dark, romantic, vibey, mysterious thing. You're like, eh. So,
Right.
so you have to kind of suss it out, see what feels right, and then yeah, set forth some kind of practice that you will be consistent with.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you saying that because I have just sharing a little bit. I have that's going to be more of my approach next year with my music of trying to get at least a song every month out, and so I'm trying
Nice.
to line all that stuff up now.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's
before we
good to be
move,
several months ahead of time.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's where
As
I've
much
had to
as you
get.
can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we move into this last segment, I just want to kind of touch on it because you mentioned it too, but the role that nature plays in your inspiration with music.
Mhm.
And those are two separate things, but they're also very connected, right? There's just nature is what it is, but then it seems I know you love nature. I know you love hiking and all that kind of stuff. So, what is that relationship for you?
Absolutely. And I saw this thing thanks to social media just like 2 or 3 days ago that kind of made me rethink. It's been playing in my mind, and it was this lady who I think she was from Peru, from an indigenous tribe in Peru, saying that they don't have a word for nature because when you have a word for that, it's its own thing and it's separating us from it.
Hmm.
And that they just refer to the living trees, the living rocks, the living mountains, the living fields,
Mm.
the living grass. And it's something it's like we touch on. And out of the other hats I wear, I'm a producer and editor on my mom's podcast called Blue Medicine Journal, a Jungian podcast. And one thing that Dr. Sandra Del Castillo, may I just plug her there,
Give her a
Dr.
plug,
Sandra Del
yeah.
Castillo. Yes, the first doctor on the family on both sides, and I'm so proud of her.
Mm.
She Yeah, I'll just say it's been so cool to see her legitimized at this professional level with everything that she's been telling us her whole life,
Mm.
at least my whole life.
Yeah.
Um, but she talks about living in an ensouled world where everything is ensouled, where everything has a soul, the plants, the trees, nature, and and there's that word, and I feel funny saying it,
Yeah.
but it is, it's how we refer to,
Yeah.
uh, the world, and so absolutely, I escape to nature. I've been a hippie child. I grew up playing out in the woods and down in Mexico too. And it'd be like, oh, let's go play in the backyard where it just spills into nature. And who knows, maybe we'll run into a rattlesnake and almost get bit, and or maybe we'll run into a mountain lion, and that happens. All of the above, where you're like, oh, whoa, that's a mountain lion on the other side of this
Mm.
chicken wire fence. That's like right over there. Wow. Okay. Or wow, I almost just did step on a rattlesnake, or, but that just, at this point, I'm a full on tree hugger. I'll go on hikes and I'll just touch a tree and be like, oh, good vibrations, man. And
Hmm.
just give it a hug. And I may be like tricking myself into thinking that I feel the exchange of energy, even though I don't really feel it 100% there. But I know that, it's like our meters have to adjust and stuff. But escaping into nature is the best thing, especially when you live in a city.
Yeah.
Just going and just lay in a grassy field for a minute, climb a tree, breathe the fresh, clean air, smell a flower, watch a bee, get stung by it. Hopefully not, but feel the order, like the natural balance of what happens out in nature, because that to me is a deep reminder, and I feel like so much of the source of the world's strife and troubles is a mindset that's out of balance with nature.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
going out into nature, when I'm out there, sometimes I'll consciously be thinking of like a harmonic progression with, maybe I'll be walking in rhythm and start thinking in rhythm right there, and then thinking, oh, this melody and that melody, and then rarely do I actually come back and create that exact thing. Sometimes I will, or sometimes I'll have one little idea and I'll use that as a launching point. But so much does happen out there where it just quiets the overstimulated brain for me and allows me that place to feel more. And I do try sometimes that kind of meditative approach where zero thought, try no thought, try several minutes of just no thought. I'm not good at it, but I try it. I keep doing it consistently, because when the words stop tumbling through my brain, music takes over, and I'm like, does that count? Does that count? Or okay, no, let's try to quiet everything. And so yeah, I just going out to nature is like a good reset. I used to call it a soul recharge. I would go when I lived in Los Angeles forever. I would go to Altadena, to Eaton Canyon a lot with friends, and we would go to areas that are now closed off because people were dying. We never did.
We made it.
Yeah. We made it, right? Yeah. Knock on wood over here, but yeah, and it would just be like the soul recharger. It'd just be a reset. And especially with being so like as we're assaulted by constant stimulation and overstimulation, and edits and movies are shorter and shorter and shorter and more. We need to hit you with everything right away. We used to make you wait for a climax, and now it's like start right there, because we're competing. Everybody's got content. Everything is content. Consume mine. So, and I fall into that. There's days where I'm just like sucked into my phone, and it feels weird to not have it on, to where I'm not consistent with my meditation, but I do meditate here and there, or I try to do a practice that will, maybe in yoga or stretching or getting to nature, anything that can kind of rebalance and just like, get rid of that, get rid of what that's doing to the overstimulated brain. And I find that most effective in nature. If I can go out into go way up into the mountains, find a lake, take all my clothes off and just jump in that lake and swim naked, that is a slice of heaven for me. That to me is like, this is what things are supposed to, this is how things are supposed to be. This is what's right. And let's remember this, let's remember this and take it back and then try to capture that feeling a little bit when I'm creating stuff, to where it's like, is this in harmony, like emotionally, vibrationally, or more when I'm creating? Does that feel right? And I think I talked about it briefly in our call the other day, but I always, when I'm creating something, I try to turn up the feel meter. And that's another thing I coined, where, as corny as it may sound, we have like a harmonic progression or something, or even we're starting from zero. I just close my eyes and try to just dial in my feeling. And I guess it's kind of like diving into the heart and into like the mind and intuition, and be like, does that capture something that feels right, that feels good, that feels, like it's got that je ne sais quoi, that mysterious, just beyond the reach of our normal daily life. And so much of the music that I create too again, I've heard so many different cliches of how this is worded and people say it, but it does feel to a degree that it's just kind of translating stuff that's already there. It's like right there, you just reach up and you put it through your lens. And so it's like being able to channel what's right here and the universal truth of the human experience in nature, and I feel so blessed and happy to be able to just have a tiny peek of that and pull back a little strand and give a little glimpse, of the little glimpse that I've had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said harmony, and that seems to like just be so true. And since I moved out of LA, it's been a reharmonization and a recalibration. I knew it happened, but it's like you don't realize it because it's also like slightly accumulative. It's not just like right away. It's like the more you're here, like there were these Joshua trees out here, and you mentioned tree hugging, but I'll just like go over there and talk with it and be like, you've been here for hundreds of years, and I'm going to be dead and gone. You're still going to be here. And it's like, you're not stressing about anything. You've seen animals come kill each other around here. You've seen, things be born, and it's like harmony. The harmony exists in nature, and it's kind of me who's out of it. So just go be with it, and it sort of imbues its spirit upon myself, I'll say. And it's like, okay, now I'm just in a more of a space of harmony with the natural order of things. And for me, it's like,
absolutely,
that just gives me a better space to be in rather than sort of this chasing or whatever other things are pulling me out of myself. So yeah,
I would say that it's both humbling and empowering at the same time. It puts stuff in perspective.
Yeah. Lucas, thank you so much. We're going to jump into this final section called Creative Confessions. And I know you were like, what do I say?
I know.
So this can be as serious or as playful as you want. This is just kind of something to differentiate what we do here. And that is, be open, and where you can share a story or a confession about your creative journey that you've never shared publicly. Or maybe it's just like a forbidden idea that you secretly want to do artistically, but you're like, I'm never going to do that. Or, that's just out of the realm of possibility. Or, if there's just like some random story too, that sounds like a fun thing you haven't shared. Does anything come up for you?
I mean, I struggled with this all week because I was like, a confession of like stuff. I mean, I will say that one thing I would absolutely love to do that most likely will not happen is to play a show that's like really groovy, kind of like at a festival, play a show and do it like the Red Hot Chili Peppers did in the 90s, where they only wear a sock and be butt naked aside from that, and just like, absolutely, I would love to do that out and like, and somewhere in like a nature indie folk, but I don't know, dance type of like festival, and just and be like one there creating that music, like living with those vibrations and sending them back and forth to the energy to the audience and just having an amazing time. So that's one of the things that I was like, I mean, ever since I saw that picture of them, like way back when I was a teenager, I was like, that looks awesome.
I'm telling you, you mentioned that, but out here there's Joshua Tree Festival, and I'm like, that sounds like the vibe. You could pull that off if you wanted to.
Really?
Very much. We have Joshua Tree Festival, and it was unlike any other festival I've been to. It's just very much like just hanging out, good time. I don't think hardly anybody even knew who the bands were that were playing. They were just there for a good time. And there was like a lot of, I was like, this is a different energy here. So you throw that out there, you never know what might happen for you. What you might manifest.
That's on my radar because I think my friend Richard actually played. I think it was, I don't know if it was Joshua Tree
or Bhakti. It was Joshua Tree and Bhakti. Yeah.
Bhakti. Okay. I don't know.
There's
he played
also
a show
like a
out
High
there.
Desert Fest. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, one of those, but I love that idea, and maybe we can talk about that and find the right people, because that would be to be in touch with, because that
I will be joining
awesome.
you. That's not my fantasy, but
well, I mean,
for you, yeah.
Thank you. I was going to say I would maybe not the first year do that, you know, but like go out, do a great job, establish really good relationships with the people who put it on, and you know, and then little by little, you know, maybe next year, you know, the one after that or something, just be like, all right, we're getting real with this one.
That's awesome.
I do hope that comes true now. That is, you've given me hope that that might actually happen.
You know, it might set things in motion. You speak it, you confess it, and things happen.
Amen.
Amen. Lucas, it's been so much fun chatting with you. Where can people find all of your amazing work?
My music is on all the major streaming platforms. So whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, you know, Amazon Music, Deezer, all the major streaming platforms. My music is there. YouTube as well. YouTube, I famously neglect, but my music is there as well. Yeah. And otherwise, you can also go to lucasbakker.com, LUCASBAKKER. And I keep that pretty updated. And yes, there, or I am on the streaming the social media platforms as I am Lucas Bakker, IAM LUCASBAKKER. When that trend was going around, like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I am this person. I am that person. I was like,
you're not like, I am the real. That's
right.
Like,
I am the real, the official. Right. Yeah. So no, just I am Lucas Bakker, and I am always trying to do just enough with social media, and with the forever goal of doing plenty, of doing more and updating more and sharing more in my stories. And so I'm always very grateful to people who have hung with me when I've neglected it and not posted in a month and a half or something, you know, and then putting something and being like, oh, thank you guys for still caring, you know, that's great, you know. And I just want to say absolutely 100% grateful to everybody who's been listening to my music over this last year. Crossing that 1 million mark for me was a huge notch on my belt to just be like, wow, okay, this is a thing and people are responding. And so that I'm so grateful for. And then let's see, I do want to plug again the podcast Blue Medicine Journal, a Jungian podcast that's on all podcast platforms. Also, I want to plug Blood Nebraska, Badlands. That's a great song. Go listen to that. Listen to the rest of the music there. Maybe listen to like the Cal Vilmer remix.
Yeah, exactly.
Fire. But thank you, Jesse. I definitely really appreciate being invited on this, and I love what you're doing with the Art and Void on school. And so I can't promise that I'm gonna be there every Monday for the calls, but I'm going to try to be as much as possible, because the community there, everybody was really cool, and it's a great space to just feel comfortable in sharing. You know, I felt like I overshared a little bit, and I was like,
it was a great energy. Yeah, it was great to have you there. So awesome,
cool.
Thank you so much. Everyone, go listen to some of Lucas's music today. It's amazing. And thank you, audience, for listening and joining us on this episode of the Art and Void podcast. I hope you found some inspiration and insight in this conversation that will help you in your artistic endeavors. Remember that the void is not an emptiness to be feared, but a space of infinite possibilities waiting to be explored.